Hey, it's the pod, Bryan and Ryan. I'm Bryan Houston. That's Ryan Peterson. Sorry we couldn't get to you yesterday. But Baylor's still the national champion. So
They
just
are.
wanted to point that out. First of all, how was your Easter weekend, Mr. Peterson?
Had a great Easter weekend. We served at church in the morning and had a great worship service, and then we had a good Easter lunch with friends and a big Easter egg hunt. So our kids had fun, and it was just a
Socially
good
distanced,
day.
I'm sure.
Well, everybody pretty much has had the shot, so
There you go.
um, yeah, it felt at least a little bit back to normal, and obviously just celebrating he is risen. So
You bet.
good. Easter's always a good day.
Yeah, I did get my second vaccine shot, so if I do sound a little out of it, please forgive me. Boy, that UCLA performance, Bill Walton was magnificent Monday night, wasn't he? It was incredible.
It,
No,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm just kidding. I no, for those of you who are concerned about getting that shot, get the shot. It's not that big a deal. It's a little bit of inconvenience to have to go and do it, but like yesterday, I went into Harvey Convention Center in Tyler, Texas. The time before with the first shot, I got the drive-through treatment. McDonald's, have it your way, and they stab you in the arm. But only thing I got was a little groggy and a little out of it, a little loopy. But then again, most people would say, so what's different about that than any other day of the week for you, which is true. But it's worth it. So it felt very freeing to get that shot and feel like, okay, I can start in a couple of weeks. I feel very comfortable about getting back to doing normal stuff, but still taking cautions. So just telling people about that. So we watched basketball. The Easter weekend was very quiet for us. Our son's in San Antonio. We weren't able to get together. We watched church online. So we're still hunkered down until probably another week or so. But we watched the Final Four on Saturday, which is my favorite event of the year, bar none. That include the only time I can say there's something I get more excited about is when LSU played in the national championship game. Okay. Final Four always is my favorite. I was so deeply disappointed in the Houston Baylor game because I thought it would be a game and it wasn't.
Right.
But the UCLA Gonzaga game more than made up for it.
It was funny because if you had told me going into the Final Four weekend that the epic, and really the only good game of the 3-game weekend would be UCLA Gonzaga, I probably would have disagreed with you. And I know we always have recency. I was talking to another friend about this. We have recency bias because you think back, it wasn't that long ago. You had the Nova North Carolina national championship game, the epic. North Carolina hits the shot and then Nova hits the shot at the buzzer. I think what was different though about the Zags and UCLA game, I don't remember seeing so many tough shots hit down the stretch. Like no one could miss. It was just such good basketball. We always hear like college basketball isn't as good as it used to be because so many guys go to the NBA quicker. But that was a high quality basketball game. That was about, to me, as good as it gets. And no kid buckling under pressure, but hitting tough shot after tough shot. And it was one of the few times where I truly was like, man, no one deserved to lose this game.
No.
I really felt bad for the UCLA kids. To lose like that, what a game. Don't know if it's the greatest game ever, but it was one of the funnest games I've ever watched. You just were on the edge of your seat, and it didn't matter if you had any rooting interest in the game. It was just it was incredible. Guys playing at such a high level. All that being said,
Wow.
that set up
Wow.
what I was thinking was going to be one of the greatest championship games ever.
It was for one team.
It was a complete dud. And you had mentioned earlier that you thought Houston Baylor would be a better game. A lot of people were giving Houston a hard time. And, they're not a Power 5. And the reality was Baylor, I think, would have done that to anybody because they did it to Gonzaga 2 days later.
They did it to everybody they played in the tournament.
Yeah. They played at a different level. you and I talked about Baylor several weeks ago after the COVID. They were out 3 weeks, and would this affect them? I thought at the time they would be okay because they were coming back, at the right time where they would have enough time to hit that gear. Because honestly, Brian, I think if they hadn't have had the COVID issues, I think they would have gone undefeated too.
Yeah.
They lost to Kansas. They had just gotten back. And then they lost in the Big 12 tournament, but they played at a whole nother level. They were so impressive. It wasn't fun for the opposing teams to watch, but man,
Well,
they got after it.
I'm going to tell you, I was absolutely stunned, astonished, amazed, because Baylor came out of the locker room in their jocks. And I mean, the defense was unbelievable. They didn't miss a 3-pointer. I mean, they just came out, and it was like Joe Frazier and Ali, and Frazier just knocks Ali to the mat first thing. And from that point on, it was like the champs staggered. And they never could regain their wits. They made a slight run to get back within 10. But Michael Wilbon said it best. When you looked at that Baylor team, all you could keep thinking was 4 words: bigger, stronger, faster, better. All around. They completely dominated every phase of that game. And it was just astonishing. And you talk about recency bias. You think about the way Gonzaga beat UCLA, and you start thinking, okay, that's a team of destiny. That's like Christian Laettner hitting the shot against Kentucky, and they go on and win the championship. That's like Houston knocking off Georgia to get into the championship game, and then they beat Phi Slamma Jamma in the championship with Valvano. You just think team of destiny, so that you just feel like this thing is paved for that team to go ahead and write a historical story. But boy, Baylor ripped the last chapter out of that book.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't competitive. And I think the thing that surprised me the most, look, Baylor, I believe, had the highest 3-point percentage in the country. So they can hit the 3, but you had mentioned the defense. Gonzaga, even, they had a tough game with UCLA, but it wasn't because they couldn't score. They score so easily. They cut, they pass. It's beautiful basketball to watch. And Baylor was having none of it. And it was the first time we had seen all year. And again, it wasn't that the Zags hadn't played anybody. I mean, they had played a very good USC team who everyone thought was maybe the best with their length, one of the best defensive teams in the country. And they completely picked them apart. But Baylor came out like they were playing ready for a football game. They bodied them up, and Gonzaga, what the old phrase, you have a plan until you get punched in the mouth.
And that plan was crushed. 9-0. That plan was gone.
Yeah. And the crazy thing was, you kept thinking Gonzaga will make a run. And, they made a slight run, but they cut it to 10 at halftime. But that was it. I mean, they never got it closer. And then every time they would maybe get it to about 10, then Baylor would hit a couple threes. And they were just so quick and fast. They just looked like a different level, which was crazy because all year I thought Gonzaga was the best team. But again, Baylor, I think, would have been undefeated. I think the COVID thing made us forget how good Baylor was at the beginning of the year.
Well, the thing about when you watch that game, and I mean no disrespect to Gonzaga, they had a great year. They were undefeated coming into the game. They were getting ready to make history. But it looked like an NBA team against a high school team. I mean, that's how much physically dominant Baylor was. And I'll tell you, the big key to me in the ball game was the fact that as good as Kispert and Timmy are, the guy that could not get into foul trouble got into foul trouble so early, in Jalen Suggs, their heart and soul, the point guard. He left the ball game in the first 4 minutes, and he did not play most of the first half. He ended up still leading the team in scoring with 22 points, but to not have him on the floor for most of the first half did not help things. But credit that to Baylor, because Baylor just outplayed them. They just
and the funny thing, they were turning the ball over. It was almost like Baylor had gotten their heads because they were having unforced turnovers, like just dribbling it off their leg. Just the defender would just rip it out of their hands. Timmy turned it over multiple times. which I was disappointed he wasn't flexing after every mistake, because he likes to flex after every layup.
He did
But
flex after one basket when they were still down by 15. I mean, come on.
Yeah, but just amazing. And you know, that's the thing though. It wasn't that the Zags don't have the guys. I mean, they had 3 guys that are all Americans, and Suggs could be the #1 pick in the draft. That's what a lot of people were saying. But they got in his head. He got the 2 quick fouls, and they just really one of the most impressive championship game performances I've seen against a good quality opponent, a team that was going for history. And it makes you wonder, I guess my next question, are we ever going to see a team run the table again? Because it's so rare that you even get to the championship game. I think they were the 3rd team to lose, but I don't know if it's going to happen. It's so hard.
Think about the great teams that have won championships since 1976, when Indiana won it all and was the last undefeated team. And I remember that team because that was right after I got out of high school. And that team was, you still name the starting lineup. It was fantastic. But you think about the Duke teams with Leitner and Hurley and Grant Hill that never went undefeated. You think about the Kentucky team with the Brow, and they didn't go undefeated. You think about the Villanova with some of the teams that they had that won the championship, and they didn't go undefeated. I don't think
UNLV's great team.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, they were undefeated till Duke knocked them out in the championship. I do believe the closest we could have gotten would have been this year with either Baylor or Gonzaga, but COVID, I think, knocked Baylor's chances of that out. Gonzaga was so good, but I'm going to tell you what, Ryan, I do agree with you. They played people, but I think that stretch where you're playing only conference games, the West Coast Conference just does not challenge Gonzaga, and they don't get tough enough when they get into the tournament to play. It's like, yeah, you played tough games, but then you had a 2-month vacation, and then you get into the tournament,
So I don't know if I totally agree. BYU was really good. They had to beat them 3 times.
They weren't Baylor.
Look, here's the thing. Here's what I will say. I agree with you in terms of if Gonzaga, okay, I don't know I don't think anyone could argue with this. If Gonzaga had played Baylor's schedule, they would not have been undefeated.
No, absolutely.
But I still think they would have been in the national championship game because I think they were good enough.
No argument.
Yeah. So, because, and I'm not arguing with you. I've seen some arguments. See, Gonzaga doesn't play anybody, and that's not true because they played it. They beat 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 seeds in the regular season, and then they steamroll. I mean, USC looked legit. They pounded KU, and Gonzaga pounded them. But you're right. They don't have it day in and day out. But it's also why I do think if we're going to have an undefeated team, Gonzaga has the best chance, again, because they don't have that grind of a Big 12 or an SEC, or the ACC was down this year, a Big 10 every night. So that's the thing. I don't know if we'll ever have an undefeated team, but I think it's more likely if we do, Gonzaga would be the team because they don't have to play, like you said, 30 games against. I mean, every night it's tough. They get somewhat of a break when they're in the conference play.
I saw again, was watching Pardon the Interruption yesterday, and Tony Kornheiser had the stat that Gonzaga in the NCAA tournament against #1 seeds over this last 10 or 15 year run they've had, 0-10.
Oh, wow. I had not seen that.
Okay. So there's a body of work there.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I know this is probably overreaction, but if they didn't win it this year, I don't know if they'll ever win it, because this was.
I agree, and I said the same thing after the game. You just felt like this team was so special. They had 3 All-Americans. Suggs was the highest recruit to ever come through there. That's the thing. Mark Few has built a culture and a program that they just keep reloading. They play the right way, but he had done it without the #1 5-star recruit. Well, he got one, and they had the perfect setup and run, and it still wasn't enough. Look, hey, they may end up being in the same spot next year.
It could very well be a Final Four team.
But yeah, I think it also just goes to show you how hard it is to win a national championship. There's luck. You've got to be on every night. You cannot have a game where you're just not ready to play.
You know,
because you play someone like Baylor and it's over.
you know what I'm saying too, and I've heard this said by some basketball experts the last week or so, because I'm not smart enough to think of this stuff on my own. But what you saw, the way Baylor put that team together, a lot of transfers, a lot of veteran kids who've played college basketball. I think you're seeing what could be a major trend changer in college basketball, where you get away from the one and dones, because that didn't do any good for Kentucky, Duke, or Kansas this year to have a bunch of one and dones. But you got teams now, hammering the transfer portal, and they're bringing in veteran kids who are playing. They've got experience, and so Baylor had a veteran team on the floor, that played well together. They played great defense. They understood how to play the game, and the moment wasn't too big for them. I think that that's what you're going to see going forward, because it's the wild, wild west now with the transfer portal. It's just anything goes. You could have the greatest team in the world today, and then 5 guys transfer out as soon as the season's over.
Yeah, and the transfer portal, I get wanting the kids to have freedom, but I don't think
like
it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be good for the sport right now. The season just ended, and we've already got around 1,200 kids in the portal. The season just ended. There's going to be way more even coming up, and you're seeing now. And here's the thing, Brian, and none of these kids want to hear this. There is not going to be a spot for them. All these kids that transfer, there is not going to be a spot for them everywhere. You still have freshman classes coming in and talented kids. All these kids think if they weren't playing, well, there's kind of 2 reasons. There's all these kids that aren't playing think that their coach is dumb and that they can just go find a better situation. Then you have, like you saw the kid from Drake, the point guard, he has 3 years of eligibility left. He got that too bright stage for 2 games, lit it up. And he's like, I'm out of here because I can go to a big time program. And now Kansas, USC, all these schools are going at him. So it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt small schools in that their studs, if they get that chance, they're going to be like, all right, I'm out. But there's so many transfers. Those other kids are going to need somewhere to go too. So I do think that they'll be able to replenish, maybe not with as good a player, but it's going to be like free agency now. Like watching your team, even mid-majors now, watching your team, watching a collection of kids 2, 3, 4 years together, that's not happening anymore. And redshirt year, I don't even see how you can redshirt a kid anymore because he's going to transfer.
No, the only way you redshirt a kid is if he is he's I hate to say this, but he's white, weighs 120 pounds, is 7'11". I mean, he's somebody that's needs to develop incredibly.
Well, I remember like Wichita State, when Greg Marshall started building them and their culture, he would always redshirt a kid or 2. And then they would end up staying 5 years, and then by their senior year, they were a big part, and they would have a big part in the tournament. Kids don't have that patience; they're not going to do that. And I think normally you don't see redshirting a lot with the Power Fives, anyways. But you would see mid majors do it a lot, where they would redshirt a kid if they thought he needed 1 more year. And now you just can't take that risk because they're gonna jump ship. They're gonna think, well, this coach doesn't respect me, or I'm better than he thinks I am. So it's going to be interesting. But yeah, Baylor won with a lot of transfers, and we've seen transfers have made a big impact the last couple of years, but now it's going to be even bigger because I think I saw a stat on average, every team has 3.5 to 4 transfers already. And again, the season just ended. So it's the wild, wild west, and it's going to be the new normal.
And one of the things, I talked to a good friend who is a former Division I basketball coach, and he said what you're getting ready to see is a lot of old coaches leave the game. Roy Williams is already retired. Yeah. Tom Izzo is getting of that age. Mike Krzyzewski, those guys that have coached in this game for Jim Boeheim have coached in this game for decades, and I just don't see them having the energy in their 70s to deal with what they're going to have to deal with now, not only in having to recruit high school kids, recruit 5-star kids, but then to recruit your own kids just to talk them into staying for a second year, or to have to, suddenly you've got to have a coach who is devoted to just scouring that transfer portal every day to see what you're going to get. And you're going to see a lot of coaches leave the business. The question I have now, based on Baylor, okay, they are the class of the Big 12 right now. All right. And Texas Tech is right there with them, and Kansas is right there with them. Okay. So now Chris Beard has taken the job at Texas. We didn't get a chance to talk, but we thought it was going to happen, but then it did happen. And Tech could not do anything to talk him into staying. He wants to go to Texas. And he's already hired the UTA head coach, who was a former assistant at Lubbock, to be an assistant with him. So he's taken a lot of his buddies with him down to Austin. So, the thinking is that people are saying that, well, now he can go down there and recruit 5-stars. I think he's a fool if he varies from what he did at Tech. Transfers, tough kids that play defense. I don't think you need to go out and get 5-star recruits to win, because Shaka tried to do that. He couldn't win with them.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a happy medium, because look, I still think you saw with Baylor, you got to have guys that are just, you
not only have to have stars, but you got to have guys.
Have to, but it does help having, if he can get at least like 1 or 2.
No doubt.
But the problem with that is the culture is just a kid's mindset, is different as a 2 or 3-star than a 5-star.
Well, and that's the thing about Baylor, was that team was a totally unselfish team.
Yes.
You had 3 guards more than willing to share the ball. Okay. You had role players. Vital wasn't complaining because he wasn't scoring a bunch. That dude was hitting the glass.
But he's so important. Yeah. And he's so important.
And he was a monster in that game, and he hardly scored.
Right.
They had 16 offensive rebounds. Those guys played their role. And 5-star kids, you gotta spend half the season beating them down to get them to accept their role, because it may not be the role they think they ought to have. So I just think that the reason that Shaka didn't succeed at Texas is because he got to Texas, thought, okay, I'm going to have better talent, so I don't have to coach like I did at VCU. And I think that hurt him. I think Beard will be first of all, I don't think Beard's going to change the way he coaches. He is hard-nosed. He's all about defense. And whether the Texas fans think it's pretty basketball or not, he ain't going to care, because if he wins 25 and goes to the NCAA tournament and wins a couple of ball games, if they're winning 50-45 every night, too bad. Get over it. If they're complaining, then they get what they deserve. Of course, I think they get what they deserve anyway, but
they nearly won the national championship, our last NCAA tournament. Like so I agree. I do think it was a great hire for Texas. It'll be interesting to see if it works. But Chris Beard is such a good coach that hard-nosed style, I think it is going to translate. But like you said, he's got to keep recruiting the kids that are going to work, and not entitled kids that, don't want to play his way.
He's going to have to build a culture that Texas is not known for having. In football,
and it is going to be interesting
basketball,
to see. It's going to be interesting to see too what happens with Tech now. Yeah. They promoted. What's his name?
Mark Davis.
So I was a little surprised. I thought maybe they could get, because Chris Beard had built that program up, I thought they could get somebody. But you've seen now there are multiple high-profile schools that are just promoting assistants. So
Loyola Chicago promoted their assistant.
North Carolina, Hubert Davis got So
what do you think about Moser going to Oklahoma?
He's I think he's a really good coach. It'll be interesting to see if what he does translates in the Big 12. I've always liked him, and I've known about him for a long time because my Wichita State Shockers used to be in the Valley with Loyola. It was funny because when Loyola got moved to the Valley to replace Creighton, a lot of people weren't happy about it because they thought it wasn't a good enough program. And Mosier had them competitive very quickly. But again, with these guys that build these amazing cultures, you look at what Shaka did at VCU and he left. they build something. He built something special at Loyola where you're in a league where you have a great chance to make the tournament in that league because you're usually going to be better. I don't know. I don't know if it's the best move for him, but I get the challenge. And look, Oklahoma is a good program, and he should be able to win there. But there's going to be pressure because.
Well, I'll tell you this though, Joe Castiglione is one of the best athletic directors in the country, and if anybody is going to give him time to get his culture in place, it's going to be Joe Castiglione. That's not an
Which is what he's going to need because he didn't do it overnight at Loyola.
No,
there were some rough years. That's the thing. There were some rough years there. They stuck with him, and then he ended up having a great 3-year window where Loyola was back on the national stage. So, I think he's going to need time. But that's the thing. You come to Oklahoma, they were just in the tournament. It's like, well, we need to be back.
well,
I think it is going to take him some time.
I was just going to say though, Lon Kruger had a great culture. I mean, so it's not like he's going to have to go in. It's not like he's taking over a dumpster.
That's true. That's true.
You know, he's going in.
A lot of people didn't like the Lon Kruger hire when Oklahoma hired him, and that
Lon Kruger's a great coach,
and that proved to be a great hire. So yeah.
I think it's a really good fit. I think that they are it's a good fit for him. I mean, he gave Loyola 10 years. And it's not like he just, he got that first run to the Final Four and then bolted. He gave him 10 good years. So I think he deserves a chance to see if he can make it on the next level. But so anyway, Baylor's won the national championship. Already they're saying that Gonzaga is the favorite along with UCLA to be in the Final Four next year. I think one thing I do think about Mick Cronin, people complained about that hire. The UCLA, he wasn't flashy enough. He's not Pat Riley. He's not a Goomba. He's not, John Calipari. That dude is perfect for UCLA.
Yeah. And I didn't understand why people didn't think it was a good hire. I mean, what he did at Cincinnati, he had Cincinnati right where Huggins had Cincinnati. I mean, they were in the tournament they did not miss the tournament with him as coach. Now, he never made a deep run, and that's all anyone cares about is if you make a deep run. And, this year he did, but UCLA, almost didn't even make the tournament. But I think that was more to the fact they hadn't played enough games at that point. But no, great coach. And again, we were talking about Chris Beard, the culture, it's hard-nosed. He cares about defense. He cares about rebounding, which when you think UCLA basketball, the pageantry and all, that's not what you think. But look, he still had guys that could score. They played beautiful basketball against Gonzaga, and they were right there. They were almost in the championship. So that was a great hire. Look, defense and rebounding translate no matter what you're doing. So if you have an off night offensively, if you can still rebound and defend at a high level, you're still going to be in the game. And that's why I love those coaches. It's not the prettiest basketball, but you're always in it.
Yep. We're running out of time. Just real quickly, your thoughts on Sam Darnold getting traded to Carolina?
I guess I'm torn on Sam Darnold because I feel like he should be better, and I think he has better football ahead of him. I guess the thing is Carolina they gave up a 2 and a 4 next year, and what was it, a 6 this year? Yeah,
3 draft picks.
So I guess it's worth the risk. I do think now I guess it would take Carolina out of the quarterback for the draft, and now it really opens up for business at 4. Will Atlanta trade? And now obviously the Jets are starting over again,
and they're going to take Zach Wilson. It looks like.
Yeah, assuming that Lawrence goes one. There's all these smoke screens right now.
Lawrence is going one. That's garbage.
And then there was the talk Atlanta might take a quarterback, but now they could get a king's ransom possibly for that number 4 pick. So it's going to be fun. I'm really excited because I want to see, the one thing, and then we do need to wrap up. Justin Fields seems to keep slipping, which I don't really understand. I was hearing an interview yesterday. They were talking about it was because he didn't go to his second read very often, and that could be worrisome going to the NFL. But man, you look at his physical traits. I look at how tough he was in the college football playoff. He got smoked, and he got right back up. He could barely breathe, and he delivered a couple dimes. His arm strength, his athletic ability, I think he's worth a risk way more than Trey Lance, who hasn't played in 2 years. And in the one game he played last year, he wasn't that good. So
That,
it's
that
going to
I
be
agree
crazy.
with.
Yeah.
That I agree with. I got 2 words for you when it comes to Justin Fields. And Justin Fields may be terrific. Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah, but I don't think that's fair because, I mean, if we're going to say that, then I would say then Mac Jones shouldn't be considered legit because no Alabama QB. I mean, Tua hasn't proven anything either.
It's early
I don't
yet.
like judging a guy based on what somebody else did at the school. I mean, I get it. I get it that if it's the system, but Fields is, I mean, he has every physical tool. He works hard. That whole thing about him not loving the game was ridiculous.
No, I agree with that. That's crazy.
I think he's a leader. He's one of the kids that saved the college football season.
Yeah.
Especially for Big Ten. He's passionate about it.
I just didn't think he had a
he
particularly good season this past year. He was not as good his senior year as he was his junior year, or actually his freshman year to his sophomore year.
Yeah.
I mean, he did not have a good year, and he struggled against the good teams this year. But I still think he's a phenomenal talent. And if you're talking about him over Trey Fields, that's where you get so irritated with NFL, management and scouts who fall in love with measurables, and they don't have enough tape to really make a judgment on the guy. And so that's why the kid from North Dakota State looks so great, but you just don't know.
And the last thing I'll say, and then we can go. If we're going to say Fields wasn't as good this year, Trevor Lawrence hasn't been even close to the same since his freshman year.
True.
And we're anointing him the next great quarterback and the #1 pick.
True.
So I don't like how one guy gets off the hook and the other doesn't. Yeah. So, and look, maybe the odds are the numbers usually say only one of these guys is going to end up being elite anyways. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting, and I'm excited to see. Quarterback has become so important now, and getting him on that rookie contract because of the things you can do with the salary cap. I think Atlanta is going to get somebody to come up there at 4, and we could have 4 quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4 for the first time ever.
It's going to be crazy. All right, we didn't even get to talk about the Masters, but we will talk about the Masters next week.
Yes, sir.
Ryan, thanks very much for everything.
Yes, sir.
Hope you have a great week, and we will talk to you guys later. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give us some reviews, share with your friends. The 5 of you that watch, we're down to 4 now. Thanks very much for watching. Hope you have a great time. Have a great week.
See ya.